Ethnography. Anthropologists don't just investigate humans of the past and present. Like all scientists, we also need to communicate our research to a broader public. The primary product of cultural anthropology is ethnography. We already know that the prefix ethno refers to culture. Graphy refers to the writing of a specific subject. So ethnography is literally the writing of culture. But in the context of anthropology, ethnography is more than simply writing about a culture. It isn't a travel guide. Ethnography is the means by which cultural anthropologists convey what they've learned about other peoples to an outside audience, presenting ideas, belief, and practices that may seem alien to the reader in a way that can be relatable to them and their own lives. What we call making the strange seem familiar. But anthropologists today also do research within our own communities to better understand ourselves. An outsider's perspective that attempts to take nothing that we do for granted in order to avoid an ethnocentric perspective. This is trying to make the familiar seem strange. Although the term ethnography strictly refers to the writing of culture, it is an umbrella term that for anthropologists has a number of components. Firstly, it needs to adhere to the fundamental lenses of anthropology, from a perspective of cultural relativism and not ethnocentrism. It must be holistic and consider how different cultural beliefs and systems are related. If you observe culture A doing a thing in one way, and you know that culture B does it differently, what other contexts help shape that difference? And it should also be interdisciplinary, but at a minimum draw from other research in related areas. An anthropologist studying, say, the role of sports or athletic competition in cultural identity can't just make assumptions and move on. They need to look at what other researchers have observed in similar contexts. Consider what other histories or contexts result in similarities or differences. What binds us and what makes us unique? Ethnography also requires that anthropologists employ the tools of the field and the ethical considerations we are bound to. Soon we'll cover the topic of fieldwork, itself an umbrella term that refers to all of the methods and practices that anthropologists employ when doing our research in the field among the cultures that we investigate. Put briefly, fieldwork requires anthropologists to spend time with their community of study, not just observing, but participating in their culture, learning about the lives of everyday, ordinary people in a hands on way, as much as we are allowed to by members of the culture and our own ethical considerations. We observe and participate in people's daily lives, and through these, learn to ask better and more specific questions to better understand them and humanity in general. And of course, there's the communication of what we have learned. Much ethnography comes in the form of academic papers, published in journals that are both accessible and sometimes inaccessible by the general public. Because these types of publication are limited by the number of characters in each article, they are by necessity often very narrow in focus. Ethnographies in book form tend to be more in depth. They have the luxury of engaging more deeply with different beliefs and systems in their analyses. They often reflect the other published work of the author among their community or specific focus, as well as compare and contrast with other cultures in similar contexts. We'll look more closely at the lenses and tools of anthropology used in ethnography in our next few modules. And that's the end of this microlecture.